State officials in 16 states, including Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, filed a lawsuit against the Biden administration after the administration revoked the permit to build the Keystone pipeline. The lawsuit claims the president does not have the authority to change the energy policy set by Congress. The head of the U.S. Senate committee says transporting the oil through a pipeline is safer than using trains and trucks.
21 state
Keystone XL pipeline, an expansion of the Keystone pipeline, which carries Canadian crude into the United States, has been blocked by President Biden. We have Yahoo Finance's Rick Newman here with us now to talk about it more. So, Rick, you and I were actually just chatting about this in the break. So give us a really super brief overview, because this project has been ongoing for over a decade. And as you and I were just chatting, it's the Keystone XL pipeline that is being impacted, not the Keystone pipeline that already exists. So give us a brief overview for those at home that don't know.
That's right. This proposal dates to 2008. And if you go back to that point in time, oil prices were up well over $100. They peaked at $150 per barrel back then. They're obviously much lower now. But at any rate, the idea with the Keystone XL pipeline was to build a new way to get oil from certain fields in Alberta, Canada, all the way down to Nebraska. And then they would, at that point, enter a different pipeline system that would take the oil to the Gulf Coast, where it would be refined. Now, this pipeline is uniquely problematic. First of all, the oil that we're talking about here comes from tar sands in Canada, and it tends to be thicker, dirtier, and more corrosive than typical light crude, which means it pollutes more, and it's more likely to leak out of the pipeline. So there has been opposition to this pipeline from day one. It looked as if President Obama might approve the permits for this pipeline, but he didn't. He actually declined to issue the permit in 2015. Then President Trump came into office, much friendlier toward energy companies. He actually approved the permit, and construction of this pipeline began last year. Some construction was scheduled to start this winter in U.S. states like Montana and South Dakota. But of course, Biden got elected in November, and he has kind of telegraphed that he was going to kill this plan all over again. So it looks like this pipeline is dead for good.
Right. And as we were talking about, and we showed everyone a map while you were talking about this project. So a huge win, of course, for environmental activists. A lot of Native American activists had been protesting against this project and against these permits. So then let's talk to us about the impact. What is the impact going to be on jobs, on the energy industry?
Well, the company that runs this pipeline, it's a Canadian company, not an American, which I think is a factor here. But it's called TC Energy, and they're saying they're going to have to lay off about 1,000 people. They haven't made clear what percentage of those would be Canadians and what would be Americans. So I think we should assume some of those would be Canadians. But look, these are job losses, and we're going to see a lot more of this under the Biden administration. And I think it's something Biden really has to be conscientious of. If he makes other decisions like this, and there are other decisions such as drilling permits on federal land, what to do about new fracking permits and things like that. If he just kind of casually kills a few oil and gas and coal jobs here and there, it's going to start to make it hard for him to get buy-in for this big transition he wants to make, the shift from carbon energy to much cleaner sources of energy. So one of the things the United States has actually been really terrible at is what to do about workers whose jobs disappear as the economy evolves, as some factories go overseas, as the digital revolution takes over. We've just done a terrible job with the safety net for workers who kind of lose out. And Biden has to be really careful about this, or his big plans for a shift to more green energy are going to run into a lot of opposition.
I just want to give a quick reminder for everyone at home. Energy sector is lagging today, down over 4%. Crude right now, down about 0.5 percentage point. Thanks so much, Rick.
Yeah.
The United States, of course, is our most important ally and trading partner. And amongst all of the Canadian provinces, Alberta has the deepest economic ties to the United States and strong social connections that go back well over a century. I wish the new administration and the people of the United States every success in the coming years. With over $100 billion worth of exports to the United States every year, Alberta has a broad range of important issues to work on to create prosperity for people on both sides of the border. But as friends and allies of the United States, we are deeply disturbed that one of President Biden's first actions in office has been to rescind the presidential permit for the Keystone XL pipeline border crossing. This is a gut punch for the Canadian and Alberta economies. Sadly, it is an insult directed at the United States' most important ally and trading partner on day one of a new administration. Today, as I speak, over 2,000 women and men have lost their jobs or are heading home from good-paying union jobs as a result of this decision. My thoughts go to every one of them as they cope with the distressing consequences of today's decision. We'll continue to fight for them and for the 59,000 jobs that this project would create. Let's be clear about what happened today. The leader of our closest ally retroactively vetoed approval for a pipeline that already exists and which is co-owned by a Canadian government, directly attacking by far the largest part of the Canada-US trade relationship, which is our energy industry and exports. The portion of Keystone XL that crosses the Canada-US border between Montana and Saskatchewan was installed last summer. It was built following a decade of rigorous environmental analysis and approval. Thousands of union workers are being fired as we speak as a result of the decision. This decision was made without even giving Canada the opportunity respectfully to make the case for how Keystone XL would strengthen U.S. national and energy security, how it would bolster both economies, and how our two countries could find a path together on climate and environmental policy. For months, we've been told that the Biden transition team would not communicate with foreign governments on this or other issues. And now a decision has been made without even giving us a chance to communicate formally with the new administration. That's not good faith. In my books, that's not how you treat a friend and an ally. For a friend and an ally, you show respect for your friends and by listening to them and giving them a chance to find common ground. The entire point of this project of Keystone XL is to strengthen the historic Canada-US relationship, building the modern infrastructure for safe, secure future exports of energy to the United States. With that, we could help our friends become less dependent on foreign oil imports, including from hostile OPEC dictatorships, some of which are openly hostile to the United States, and none of which share Canada's commitment to high environmental standards, to global stability, and to human rights. We're being told that this decision was made over concerns about climate policy. But the U.S. State Department's exhaustive analysis that was conducted under President Obama's administration concluded that Keystone XL would actually reduce CO2 emissions, as the alternative will be to move this energy by higher emitting and less secure rail transport. The Canadian oil sands have reduced the carbon intensity of the average barrel of bitumen by about 30%. And are on track for even larger reductions. Our oil sands producers rank at the top of the world in global assessments of environmental, social, and governance standards. Most of these companies have committed to net zero emissions in their operations. The Government of Canada has more ambitious emissions reduction targets than the new U.S. administration, and our provincial government here is investing billions of dollars in the development of emissions reductions technology to further make progress on this important front. In other words, Canada is part of the solution to the energy transition. But today's decision was made without giving Canada the chance to make that case. If, however, the U.S. government refuses to open the door to a constructive and respectful dialogue about these issues, then it is clear that the government of Canada must impose meaningful trade and economic sanctions in response to defend our country's vital economic interests. Not doing so would be to create a dangerous precedent. And let me be blunt. I believe it was the failure of this federal government to respond with strength to the veto of Keystone XL in 2015, which in part led to today's impasse. I believe that the transition team, the now administration, concluded from the lack of a meaningful response to the 2015 veto that this federal government doesn't really intend to stand up for this country's largest industry. I hope that's not true. I appreciate Prime Minister Trudeau's recent words, expressions of support for this project. But that support is only meaningful if it is followed by action which defends hundreds of thousands of Canadian workers in our country's largest industry, our largest export industry, that is our energy industry.